Welcome to BizTech's Jobs and Careers Show, where we feature and discuss key issues and topics related to jobs and careers across the globe. Now, today we discuss learning and development with Apratim Purakayastha, the group's Chief Technology Officer at Skillsoft, coming out of the US. Now, AP, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. Glad to be here.
Now, AP, for a start, give us an overview of Skillsoft and what you do.
Yes, glad to. Skillsoft is one of the preeminent companies that got started in very late 90s and pioneered the area of enterprise learning, right? With packaged learning content delivered online through video. That is the core innovation, which was a big innovation in late 90s, which Skillsoft pioneered. We started with business skills and leadership skills. We have now grown to deep technology skills training, as well as compliance and workforce safety. We have a large number of worldwide clients, including India, different parts of Southeast Asia, Europe, and the Americas, of course.
And what do your product and service offerings look like? And which industries and verticals have you seen the best adoption of your offerings in recent years?
Thank you. The products that we offer are essentially on-demand and sometimes live learning content in three major areas, right? One major area is what we call business skills and leadership. So we have videos and books and podcasts and book summaries that capture different competency areas in leaderships and skills, such as agile, management of time, remote work, and so on and so forth, of these emerging topics, right? We also have a library which is very deep in technology and developer, all the way from networking technologies such as Cisco or software-driven networks, to certifications in cybersecurity, to developer in Python, right? So we have over, hundreds and thousands of videos in our library, curated into journeys and learning paths in technology and developer. We also have an offer in compliance and safety, right? In workplace compliance and legal compliance and employee health and safety, we are one of the leaders in the world offering authoritative content in that area with customers all over the world. So that's how we go to market. At the same time, all of this is powered by our platform, which is an LXP, learning experience platform called Percipio, right? Percipio was developed over the last 3-4 years and is making big headways with our client. It uses artificial intelligence. It uses consumer-grade technologies to present all this content in a very easy to use fashion across various modalities such as laptop, desktop, mobile, Apple TV, and so on and so forth.
Okay, AP, drill down a little bit in terms of the advantages of your new platform.
Oh, great question. Percipio is a platform that offers consumer-grade experience for the learner, along with enterprise-grade management capabilities. We serve the enterprise, but we also serve the learners in the enterprise. So in terms of engagement, Percipio curates content into journeys and learning paths, which makes it very easy to consume content in a linear fashion to get expertise in a particular area. Then Percipio offers you certifications and badges. Percipio offers AI-based recommendations so that you are drawn into the platform, so the learning is not a chore. Percipio offers all of this in mobile form factor, the use case of a busy executive driving to work, listening to an audiobook, let's say about leadership, okay? So Percipio can be accessed by the learner whenever, wherever, anytime in multiple modalities, in a micro-learning format if you want to pick up a 5-minute video, or in a learning path if you want to invest hours over a few weeks to become an expert in a topic. So that's one advantage from a learner point of view. Percipio is also built for the enterprise, extremely secure. It integrates with learning management systems, collaboration systems like Microsoft Teams that an enterprise might have. And Percipio also can federate content from other third-party sources for complete skill building. It doesn't have to be only Skillsoft content.
So Percipio really was able to ride the wave over the last 2 years where learning really was turbocharged in terms of how employees decided that they needed to invest in themselves and companies as well.
Absolutely. And it's not just Percipio, it's an industry phenomena, but obviously we benefited from it, right? We have a number of companies in our area, and all of us, it actually lifted all of the boats where we have seen over 250% increase in consumption of learning content over the last 2 years or so, right? And this is born out of the fact that COVID itself was a disruption, but it was more of an acceleration of disruption, right? It was more of an acceleration of remote distributed work. It was a more of an acceleration of technology disruptions that we see in cloud, because with remote comes cloud, right?
Yes.
So one thing led to another, and employees suddenly felt that, oh my God, what I thought that I'll take 5 years to do, I need to do in 5 months, right? So the whole thing got compressed. And we found, not only just from the point of view of employees, a kind of penchant to learn, a penchant to move their careers, but also from employers, where we come in, where employers are seeing that they need big cohorts of employees to be certifiably become agile coaches, to be certifiably become DevOps engineers. So we see a perfect marriage of a pull learning phenomenon from employees because of their own careers and growth, and also push learning phenomenon from employers because of their business imperative. Learning is no more a nice to have. It is a critical factor of business transformation, for employees being the most valuable resource in a company.
Now, AP, I want to then zoom in on your Skillsoft's lean into learning research. Tell us about some of the insights and what you found most surprising.
Some of it we just discussed, the growth in learning, that focus on technology, etc. But I will tell you the most interesting fact that I found in that report is not the fact that we found, but the fact that is actually advertised by the World Economic Forum. The fact is 65% of the children that are born now will have jobs when they become job age, and those jobs don't exist today. 65% of those jobs don't exist today. Now that's a big number. If you compress the time scale, which means at least 25% of the jobs that people will be doing in 5 years' time don't exist today, right?
And we've already seen that, isn't it, AP? Because in the last 5 years, the explosion of new jobs and the reskilling that people required has already set the stage.
Has already set the pace. So it's now, you don't have to wait for children to become 21 years old. You can compress this phenomenon to 5 years and still see a kind of an earthquake effect. The fact that at least 25% of the jobs that will be done in 5 years either don't exist today or will be defined and given shape over the 5 years. That is the most surprising thing that I saw by implication of that statistic. And the implication of the statistic is so huge on what an employee does every day. Because if all that employee does every day is just finish the letter of the job, by definition, the employee and the employer is falling behind. Absolutely. So therefore, there's always this extra mile every day that you have to go for your own self, as well as the company, for the company's self, to actually make sure that 100% is not enough.
Now, AP, interestingly enough, we talked about young people and younger people in the workforce. But given your insights globally, what have you seen in terms of the pace of learning over the last 2 years across different age groups, particularly among older segments of the workforce?
Oh, beautiful question. What I find very humbly is that we always tend to focus on the new generation, the millennials. We tend to forget about 60% of the workforce that is in the workforce for over 5 to 7 years already, right? But imagine their careers. They're in the workforce for, let's say, 10 years. They have a 20-year career left with the longer careers that people are having. Learning and continuous growth is equally important for the other 20 years of your career that is left. Because exactly. In those 20 years, about 80% of the jobs will turn over in nature and the core skills that you would need to do the job. I'll just give you an example. 5 years ago, a marketing professional will learn core of marketing principles, right? Segmentation, etc., etc. Now a marketing professional will need to learn about 10 different technology areas to actually become a true modern marketing professional.
Correct.
And this will actually continue and continue and continue.
And you're spot on that, because essentially, as I always tell some of my colleagues and friends, if we don't keep learning, we're going to very quickly become dinosaurs.
Yes.
And
the acceleration of obsolescence is what I call it, right?
Again, it's particularly true in people 40 years and above, because you really need to stay relevant, or your job or your lunch is going to be eaten by a person 10 years younger.
Yep, 100% true, right? So especially for people 40 years and above, learning every day is equivalent to exercising every day. Your doctor would tell you to actually get in a little bit of exercise every day or a few days a week, right? Learning every day and getting a few minutes of learning every day or a few hours every week is similar to as critical as exercise for your heart once you're over 40.
Now, I want to zoom in then on the skills that, in particular, technology skills that are really in high demand. And how are people learning this? Could you share some insights on that?
Absolutely. So fortunately, we have over 30 million learners on Percipio, close to 30 million learners. And so we have a plethora of data from what they are consuming, what they're learning. I'll tell you some top trends, right? All sorts of management is data driven these days. So therefore, the whole area of understanding data analytics and understanding the basics of Python, R, so that you can actually do some data analysis yourself, that's a big area, data, right? Data analytics and so on, right? The second big area, technology area we find is cloud. Because everything is going to cloud. Even the CFO needs to understand the options of, what are his alternatives in cloud? How does that matter with what the software stack the CFO has today? Same for the CMO, right? And same for a marketing analyst. So cloud is a big deal. What we also see is what we call security for the masses, right? There's of course cyber security and the depth security that has always been there. But what we are seeing is an expansion of security awareness, an expansion of being conversant in security, just like you're conversant in reading and writing, is becoming critical. So that's a technology area that's becoming critical, because if you're not educated, if you're not prepared, you can actually cause big harm to the reputation of a company.
Absolutely.
Right? The fourth area that we see is AI. Okay, artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? Everything we do, the way we are talking on this Zoom conference right now, there's layers of AI going on, actually adjusting, the experience for both of us, and we don't know it, right? That is actually expected from every experience that you present to an employee or a consumer. So you need to be conversant about the basics of AI and machine learning, how it applies to anything that you do, right? So these 4 or 5 areas that I mentioned are really topmost, which are core technology areas that we see a lot of interest in.
AP, now if I'm wearing the hat of a chief learning officer or chief people officer, in 2022, what are the critical things that I need to think about in order to ensure that my organization and the people in it are growing at the right pace to take advantage of opportunities and are not falling behind?
Great question, Brian. There are 2 classes of things to think about. One is, how are my employees equipped and ready to handle the upcoming technology disruptions, the 4 or 5 technology areas. There are not 20, there are 4. You cannot be good at 20, right? New things, but you can be good at 4 or 5 critical new things. Am I giving the learning opportunity, the growth opportunity? Am I being able to measure the progress of cohorts, right? Through those capabilities. So that is given, that's core. But what is also very important is that the way we work is changing. So there are new, what we at Skillsoft we call it power skills, not just technology skills. Because Although technology is required, but if all you know is technology, you won't survive in a global workforce. So things like remote work and virtual work and how to be effective in a global workforce, which is much more matrixed, much more diversity oriented, right, is very critical. So DEI, remote work and virtual work, how to properly work in a matrix function where you bring your own functional capabilities, communications across the world, and health and safety, where you don't let yourself work 24 hours a day because you can, right? There is a health and safety aspect that is actually becoming very critical for employers and employees to understand. When there's no natural boundary of the drive time between work and home, how do you create small micro boundaries so that you're actually not destroying your mind and life, right? Because you want to sustain the growth and development in your company, right? So all these power skills that I mentioned, along with the technology skills, is the balance that chief learning officers must kind of give their employees as an opportunity.
And AP, then as the chief learning officer, how do I set these boundaries? Because one of the key things is a lot of employees, and especially in companies that have distributed workforces across the globe, across the region, the key challenge is the encroachment of work into your private life. How do we encourage learning across the workforce without compromising work-life balance?
Yeah, I think work-life balance is something that we need to quantize and rethink. Let me explain what I mean by the word quantize. In a classical industrial sense, where you actually had to go to a factory to work, right? There was work because you could only work in the factory, and you come back home and there's home, right? Because there's no work at home, right? So then work and life balance. But if you take that phenomenon and quantize it, right? It's not work-life balance anymore, because you can work at home or you can also do kind of home things digitally at work. So it's work-life integration. It's much more quantized, packetized work-life integration. And I think we all have to become good at that. So for example, when I finish this interview, if I need to call my doctor for an appointment after this interview, I need to be able to do that. And that's my life. I don't want to ignore that. And this is my work because this is an interview that I'm doing for my company and my customers at large, right? So how do I integrate and packetize bits of work with bits of life, and quantize and packetize? It's work-life integration. It's not work-life balance. And that's what we have to tell employees.
Now, moving on to the individual employee now, what advice that would you give someone who feels that they need to keep developing their skills in order to build their careers? And I'm sure you'll give different advice to different people at different stages of their work career.
I would, but at a high level, there are some key principles, right, which actually apply across the age group, across the career state that you have. Number one is get started. Number one is get started, right? That's a good move, to really get started and take continuous development seriously. But once you get started, it's also easy to stop, because you can have a lot of energy getting started, but then you kind of wither away. So it'll be very good to actually set goals like exercising and dieting, right? I want to set goals and I want to remind myself, right? So just like New Year's resolutions is easy to start but difficult to sustain. So setting goals and reminding yourself this is continuous investment, like you exercise or diet. This is the same for your career, right? So that's the second advice. Third advice is actually partner with some colleague or a group, right? Because it's human psychology. It's lonely, especially when you're not going to work every day, right?
Yes.
So if you can have a buddy system, or actually build a cohort that you're doing something together, there's an element of gamification to it. There's an element of social to it. And I think that's very critical. So I'm not talking about what to learn in terms of advice, but how to go about doing it.
AP, that's really good advice. And this has been a fascinating conversation. But before we leave, Any final thoughts that you'd like to leave us with before we end this interview?
Thank you, Brian. I think the final thought I live with is, again, it's the initial thought, which is the job you have today will be seriously redefined to something else that you can't recognize today. And since we live in unpredictability, the best way to deal with unpredictability is to prepare well for a lot of things, a lot of eventualities. And that's where continuous learning comes in. And so, continuous learning for your career and your mind is like exercise and diet for your body. Take it seriously.
AP, I've learned so much from this conversation. Thank you very much for taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you, Brian. My pleasure.
Now, I'm Brian Fernandez, and I've been speaking to Apratim Purakayastha, Group CTO of Skillsoft, on BizTech's Jobs and Careers show. This video and podcast will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as various social media platforms. Please visit our website for great content on business and technology conversations ranging from market investor news, leadership, wealth management, and technology. Thanks for tuning in.